this year, you'll be entertained by the sight of a sort of armada of oil tankers off the coast, which are being used to store oil. Is now more economically viable for the oil companies to actually to simply park up oil tankers full of oil rather than go through the process of actually taking it to Rotterdam to process. So the IMF's Global Stability Report said the banking system has not yet been stabilised, although of course we're told that that should happen any day now. And despite the trillions of dollars which governments have spent, in early 2008 the IMF estimated that the credit crunch would cost financial institutions $1 trillion. That's already been exceeded, and the IMF is now saying that the banks are likely to lose 2.7 trillion, but they will need another 1.7 trillion in additional capital. And once other financial institutions such as insurance companies, pension funds taken into account, the latest estimates for total global losses from the destruction of bad assets is about $6.5 trillion. We're approaching the world's annual GDP. So now, I think it's very dangerous for anybody, unless you happen to be an apologist for the system who's been asked to go on to the Today programme. It's very dangerous for anybody to actually predict the future, because nobody has been here before. And J.K. Galbraith, who's always worth reading, once said that the role of economic forecasters was to give astrologers a certain credibility in comparison. But nonetheless, so the recession may or may not going to be as deep as that precipitated by the financial crisis of 1929, but arguably it's more profound because of the highly integrated nature of world financial markets. So we can say that this is the first great crisis of global capital. So at the same time, I don't need to go into any great detail, but I think everybody here knows that the estimates of the scale and intensity of the global environmental threats grow with every scientific paper that's issued. The UK government, like all the European governments, is aiming to stay within the 2 degrees centigrade global heating level, but in 2006 David King, who was then the government's chief scientist, said that 3 degrees was more likely. The following year, Bob Watson, the chief scientist for the Environment Department, said that we should prepare for the possibility of a 4 degree rise. The 2007 IPCC report said that average temperatures could rise by 6 degrees in the century. And in April, The Guardian reported that a lot of scientists at the recent Copenhagen conference said that the IPCC may have underestimated the scale of the problems, and that emissions since 2000 have risen much faster than expected. So when the authors of the Green New Deal pamphlet say the global economy is facing a triple crunch, a combination of credit-fueled financial crisis, accelerating climate change and soaring energy prices underpinned by an encroaching peak in oil production, these three overlapping events threaten to develop into a perfect storm, the like of which has not been seen since the Great Depression. They're not overestimating the situation. So the aim of this pamphlet is twofold. Firstly, to look at what are the underlying causes of this crisis, certainly of the financial crisis, and to propose some programs for mitigating the effects of this perfect storm. So first of all, in order to do that, we need to actually see, despite the fact that the press are having a, surprisingly, having a go at what do they call him, Fred the Shred, for his £700,000 pension, and if I was one of the thousands of RBS staff having to live on £64.30 a week job seekers allowance at the moment, I would be perhaps a little pissed off with them as well. But nonetheless, actually, the cupidity and recklessness of a handful of spivs is not the fundamental cause of this crisis. They were sitting in the they had their fingers on the trigger, but the fact is that the fault lies deep in the machine. And Michael Pryor, who's a member of Green Left and wrote a rather interesting pamphlet some months ago called Beyond Feel Bad Britain, put it very neatly when he said, when he described the fundamental contradiction within our economic system. Capitalism, he said, has always been beset by one overriding economic problem, that of cyclical crises of lack of consumer demand. The capitalist imperative is to grow, to expand economically, and historically it's achieved this aim in an unprecedented fashion. Its besetting weakness has always been that within the imperative to produce more and at a lower and lower cost, there is a crippling flaw, a dearth of consumers to buy what is produced. So at regular intervals businesses crash, the banks which have financed their expansion fail, there is a good deal of misery for many, and a banker or two commit suicide. Then, when supply has been reduced, new innovations brought to market or new markets are found, the cycle starts again, enriching some and bringing modest prosperity to many. Creative destruction, Schumpeter termed it, though others have found less complimentary terms. Now, that's, if you like, the underlying flaw in the system. Many years ago, I don't know whether it's an apocryphal story or not, Ford took Big Bill Hayward, Henry Ford took Big Bill Hayward round the Flint plant in Michigan and said, and they had an assembly line and lots of machinery. So there you are. He said, Mr. Hayward, he said, Big Bill Hayward was the IWW leader, and he said, there you are, Mr. Hayward, he said, machines don't go on strike. And he said, yes, Mr. Ford, but they don't buy Ford cars either. And so there's the underlying crisis. Now, Keynes always said that investing in a modern capitalist economy is always a risky business, and that he said that actually that there are all sorts of possible that investment shortfalls can result from any number of factors.